I've got the questions in my pocket. So we've got two people, one person on this side, raise your hand with a microphone. John's up there, and then Walter is there with a microphone. So I'm going to call two names at a time, and then you just stand up and ask your question. If you need your card back, we'll run it back to you, and this congressman will answer it. So we're going to start with Carol McGrath from Bluffton and Felice LaMarcia from Hilton Head Island. Raise your hand or stand up. Just stand up and they'll come see you.
Who's got the mic?
John, come on, John. They all young. Y'all gotta start moving. Let's go. He'll bring it to you. You don't have to come out.
Thank you, Mr. Clyburn.
And tell me your name so I can put your question down.
Felice Lamarca.
Okay.
Hilton Head Island. Thank you. I would truly like some guidance in how we're going to fight the lies and bring the truth out and get this country turned around. Please help us.
Well, the first thing we've got to do, and I have started on this. In fact, I think was it last night? I did I think CNN with somebody. I can't remember. It was last night, and I was asked a question about something I said a couple of days ago, and I said that part of our problem, this is not just a Democratic problem, this is a problem for the country, and this is a problem for our media, and this person took issue with me and brought it up. Well, let me tell you this. The Washington Post has had a significant number of they have not publicized all of the resignations they've had because people have quit because the newspaper has decided that it's not going to write the facts about this administration. I was on Harvard's campus. I spoke at Harvard University last Monday night of last week. I was on that campus when Harvard made the decision that it was not going to give in. I went over to New York the next day and sat down for lunch with a former student of mine who's a graduate of Columbia Law School. And he told me at the time that Columbia University is now second guessing the decision they made to go along, and they're not going to go along. That's what it's going to take for us to challenge this, and challenge the lies. Just don't sit quietly. That's right. While the bad people go around lying, and good people accept the lies. So we're going to have to challenge it. I really believe we can shame some of these media people. It's not I just mentioned the Washington Post, but that's not the only one. 60 Minutes, their long-time producer has just quit because he's being ordered to do things that is not representative of the truth. And so we've got to all make truth squads out of ourselves. And we've got to start challenging. So I've been asking people to do some things that maybe I'll step outside their comfort zones. You know, it may be very comfortable to stay out of the fray. When I mentioned being here at Kent Community Center back in the 50s and 60s, you know, I'm a 1961 graduate of South Carolina State, which means that Emily and I just talked about her. This may surprise a lot of you. Emily and I met in jail. We met in jail. March 15th, I never shall forget when we met. 1960, we were challenging the status quo. The status quo at the time says, I could go into the S.H. Cressley on the square. It's now owned by Clyburn University. And I could buy school supplies, but I couldn't sit down at the lunch counter and eat a hamburger. The status quo at that time says I could ride the city bus, but I had to sit on the back of that bus. Or I had to give up my seat if the bus was crowded and a white person came on the bus. We challenged that. And we went to jail for that. But you know what? I never was afraid that we were not going to succeed. Because we raised our voices. We organized the vote. We challenged the school administration. Because we felt strongly that in the end we would win. So that's what it's going to take. We must challenge it, write letters to these newspapers. We got to don't run from it. Don't let it ride. Challenge it. We got to challenge it because our children are not going to feel good about us if we allow this country to become an autocracy. I just don't feel good about us.
Thank you.
All right, Carol McGrath, will you stand up? John, come on.
Hi, thank you for being here tonight, Congressman.
Yes.
I'd like to know, with polling showing the president going down in popularity, do you think at any point the Republicans may come around a little bit and try to work with others?
Yes, some will. But it's going to be on what I would call a case-by-case basis. I don't think you're going to have any big organized effort. I think you have to look at each issue. And let me give you an example. I didn't miss getting any of South Carolina judges confirmed because I went case by case and I sat down with Senator Graham and we quietly, no press conferences, we got it done. We got $65 billion in the infrastructure bill for broadband because we did it quietly in my conference room. And we got enough Republicans to make that bill a bipartisan. That's why they call it the bipartisan infrastructure bill. It wasn't no big group of them. I think it was only 13. All we need is 5. So yes, I do believe that on a issue by issue, with those numbers going down, we are going to see more and more on the other side that will provide those 5 or 6 votes that we need on issues to get things done. That's why I didn't open that way tonight because you're such, I can look in your faces and tell I didn't need to say what I opened with the other night. I said that, you know, I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm not going to yell at anybody. I do believe that the first sign of good education is good manners. And I do believe that I've had a pretty good education. But I didn't have to say it tonight. To me, that's how I try to interact with other members on the floor. You know, the governor and I, Henry McMaster and I, are good friends. We don't agree on things politically. But we worked closely together on broadband. We worked closely together to get that I-95 bridge that we need to get across Lake Marion. And of course, Trump comes in and he froze the money. He froze it. $350 million, $175 million of which is coming from the federal government. He froze it. But I think you all saw it yesterday, or in this morning papers. He is unfrozen it. I didn't say a word publicly.
You did now.
Unfrozen. And we're going forward with the process. Yes, ma'am. Those numbers are falling. They are not going to be too public because, as the senator from Alaska said, that a lot of Republicans are afraid of the reprisals. And so they aren't going to say much. But on the case-by-case basis, yes, we'll get some.
All right, next we have Marsha Hunter from Hilton Head, stand up, and David Carr from Bluffton. And if you haven't got a question card, please raise your hand and we'll bring one to you if you came in later. Is Marsha Carr here? Where are you?
Marsha Hunter.
Oh, Marsha Hunter, sorry. Oh, right here, Marsha Hunter. And then we got David Carr from Bluffton. Let's let Marsha go first and then, Mr. Carr.
I think you really answered my question rather nicely when you talked about the privatization of Social Security and how much we are not for that.
Right.
I'm very concerned with all of the rhetoric that's going on about Social Security. We have all contributed, and as you say, we all have benefited in some way. I went to college on those Social Security benefits, survivorship benefits.
Right.
So I know how important these things
Absolutely.
are. And so you did eloquently answer my question way ahead of time. So I
Well, thank
appreciate
you.
that.
Well, thank you very much, and
It
thank you.
gives me hope.
Well, you know, I'm a South Carolinian through and through. And South Carolina has two mottos. The most popular one is while I breathe, I hope. That's the one that's on our seal. But we have another motto that's not talked about a whole lot. Prepared in mind and resources. That's a South Carolina motto that a lot of people are not aware of. But I live by both those. And that's why when stuff happens, like King's letter, I said, this is a great letter. But what led to this greatness? And so that's why I have found the letter that he received. And I try to do that with things like Social Security so that people will know. It may be of interest to you to know that, you know, I'm one of those, I'm what they call a Harry Truman Democrat. I'm a big fan of Harry Truman. I've been a bit reticent over the years about Franklin Roosevelt, because Roosevelt, when they created Social Security back in 1935, 36, it limited the employment that was covered. Did not cover farm workers and domestic workers.
That's right.
That's right. So when Social Security came online, it did not allow farm workers and domestic workers to be a part of Social Security. 65% of African Americans in the country at that time were in those two fields of endeavor, and therefore were not covered by Social Security. And so I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we make up for that mistake.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Carr?
Thank you so much for being here. As a longtime educator, I value your thoughts on public education and all of the challenges to public education.
Well, as you may know, as I said, I think I said this tonight, you know, when you have these town hall meetings, I can't remember exactly what I said. But when I was offered the job to teach history at Roberts Falls High School. At the same time, my late wife was offered a job as librarian over in Ladies Island. She vetoed that offer to stay in Charleston. I'm glad she did. I didn't tell her at the time. Public education is very important. I have a daughter, my youngest daughter is on the board of trustees at Richland County. I think that it is important for us to make education affordable and accessible. And I don't understand how, and I know that you're battling this in the legislature, you see a benefit of taking public money and give vouchers to go to private schools. And I don't have anything against private schools. I graduated from Mather Academy. There was a Mather here.
Beautiful.
Part of this facility was the other Mather. There were two Mathers, one in Camden and one here in Beaufort. Same family put up the money for both those schools. Mather School here in Beaufort was a private school. Why? Because the state did not provide education for African Americans at that time. My father was not allowed an education beyond the 7th grade in Kershaw County because that's all the schooling there was for African Americans. Now, he later went to college, but he never could get his degree because the state law says you get to produce the high school diploma. So he was not allowed to go into his senior years in college because he didn't have a high school diploma. Now, public education that's how important public education is. I don't have anything against anybody who want to get a private education. When I went to Mather Academy, I washed dishes after every meal. I got a scholarship to play football. And that's how I paid. I didn't get a public voucher. So anybody that want to go to private school, that should be available to you. But you ought not be taking public money. So I agree with you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Clifford Henry from Bluffton and Deborah L. Damers of Beaufort. Please stand for the microphone. Folks can see you. Clifford Henry. Oh, here we go, all the way down. Come on down. Walter.
Oh,
And Deborah Damers. Okay.
yes, sir.
What I primarily want to know is how are we going to stop Trump?
Well, we got to do it at the polls. And I think that the first, and I mean this real sincerely. What I'm going to say now, I really, really mean this sincerely. The first two opportunities to stop Trump will take place this year in the states of Virginia and New Jersey, because they will have gubernatorial elections in those two states. One of them, New Jersey, is a state we need to hold. The other one, Virginia, is a state we need to flip. And so I've been saying to people all over, if you got friends, you got relatives in New Jersey or Virginia, go visit with them as often as you possibly can. Do it on weekends. And spend a little time helping them knock on doors. Write to them. You know, it's kind of easy in a state like that allow robocalls or live phone calls. Call your friends and get some phone numbers and call some people. It'll have a tremendous impact. If you say to somebody, I'm a veteran down here in Beaufort, South Carolina. I gave 23 years fighting for this country. Please go out and vote. In New Jersey, may be sort of more industrial, but not Virginia. Virginia will have a tremendous, I think, response to veterans issues.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, they've got more veterans in Virginia than we got in South Carolina. And military installations. So, really, I think that, I haven't talked to the Crystal about this at all, but I think that one of the things the state party could do is to organize little telephone efforts like this and get people to come to your county office and sit around and just let them know, I'm calling from Beaufort, South Carolina, and I'm just urging you to go out and help protect our veterans. That kind of effort, people, you call me from Beaufort? Yeah, because what you do in Virginia this year could very well have a big impact on how my husband or wife or son or daughter will get the benefits they may get from veterans. I just think little things like that, we've got to find some creative ways to get people to know that this is not just about them, that what you're doing up there in New Jersey could have a tremendous impact on those of us who live within the shadows of the Marine Air Station or Paris Island, not to mention Fort Jackson and Charleston Air Force Base, the Mine Warfare School. South Carolina is a veterans-friendly state, and we ought not let Trump mess it up.
Hi, I wanted to know what we were gonna do to drive our own party forward during these times in a cohesive manner.
Yes. Well, what we should not do is turn on each other. Let's turn to each other. As I said earlier, all of us will not always agree on everything. We have to work, talk, and find common ground. Don't. I remember early in my career, I was about 25 years old when I took over the Neighborhood Youth Corps in Charleston. I was 26 when I came to Beaufort to help John Gasson start the Neighborhood Youth Corps here in Beaufort. I got a call one day from a lady whose name Rowena Tobias. I don't know if anybody's here of the Jewish faith. I knew Rowena Tobias. Her father started the synagogue there around Trad Street over in Charleston. She called me and invited me to her home and down on Batteries, South Battery. So I went and she said for high tea. I didn't know anything about that. But I went. And sure enough, she had the tea. The two of us sat in the parlor of her room, and she said this to me. I've never forgotten it. She says, I have been watching you for some time now, and I think you have a tremendous career ahead of you. And she started telling me the history of Charleston. And how Charleston had the #1 port on the East Coast. And how that got lost. She says, everything we did here in Charleston, we sat down, we talked it through, save for one thing, race. She said, we talked about everything until the question came, race. And every time race came up, we stopped talking. She said, now I ask you to come here today because I want you to make me a promise. Promise me that you won't stop talking. And that has stayed with me. I think, Billy, you may have known Rowena. That has stayed with me. And so I say to people all the time, we're going to have problems. We're going to have disagreements. But don't stop talking. Keep talking.
All right, next we have Patty Toussaint of Charleston. I know I'm probably butchering that. And Catherine Klinger of Beaufort. Right here, Walter. Patty, Toussaint.
That's my grandson there, you know. That's...
Oh, hey.
Is Patty not with us? You're Patty?
I'm Patty.
Catherine Klinger?
She's right down there.
Oh, I'm so sorry. There she goes. Right there, John. Okay.
Well, I'm Patty Toussaint from Charleston, and I'm really happy to be here and happy everyone else is here.
Talking in the mic.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
A little closer. I'm just worried sick about our Constitution. How can we protect and defend our Constitution against this Trump regime?
Yep.
I have a lot of other questions too. I have a whole.
Let's just do one. I think everybody got a question.
Sorry. Especially with the due process and people just nabbed off the street and children taken from their homes, mothers disappearing off the street. We have to stop this. It's so cruel. We have to bring humanity back to this country.
We had a slide that I put up over in Summit. I was looking to see if it's still here. Do we have the slide with that 14th Amendment on it?
No.
You don't have it?
The staff said they don't have it.
There's a key to that is the 14th Amendment. And here's why I have been fearful like you are. Because the 14th Amendment was, slavery was ended really not by the Emancipation Proclamation, because it was only good. It was an executive order that comes to an end with the end of the presidency. So that's why Abraham Lincoln fought so hard for the 13th Amendment. The whole movie, Lincoln, was about trying to get the 13th Amendment. And once the 13th Amendment was put in place, that's what ended slavery. But the 14th Amendment was put in place to give due process and equal protection of laws. And so there's a group of people running around the country right now who are saying that the 14th Amendment may not mean what we say it means, because it should only apply to the formerly enslaved. And they'll make I'm not making this up. And they're making the argument that there's nobody in the country today that's formerly enslaved. So the 14th Amendment could very well be null and void. That's what the argument they're making. And so we have to, that's why it's so important for us to really wrap our arms and minds around these issues, because they're making these extraneous arguments grounded in their imaginations in order to get their way, and a lot of them feel that they've got the votes on the Supreme Court now to get them to that end. That's what's so dangerous about so much of what's going on today. And so I agree with you that the 14th Amendment quite frankly, could very well be at danger. If you look at some of these discussions that's going on, they are serious. These people are not playing.
But they're wrong.
I agree.
right.
I agree. And we've got to make sure that they're wrong.
It says what it says.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I wanted you to see it, because in that 14th Amendment, it says it takes to the issue that she's concerned about, and that is the word persons. Persons. So you're right, because the language itself says persons living in the United States or do this. So it has nothing to do with citizenship. So if you really hold to the language, you would be right and they're wrong, but they are. That's the argument. Thank you for that.
Hi.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm Catherine Klingler. I'm from Beaufort. And my question was pretty convoluted, but basically, I'm very happy with what some of the judges around the country are doing. And I was really pleased with Van Hollen, what he did going to El Salvador. I'm excited that Harvard is fighting Trump. But I feel I'm unsure about what's happening in Congress with the Democratic Party. I know we don't own the Senate or the House, and so we don't have a lot we can stand up for, but I feel like the party's a little bit fractured. And I know you're on the inside, I'm on the outside, but I wonder how you feel about that.
Well, I understand your worry. I understand your concern. And quite frankly, the party is a bit fractured. And it's because last November was a real body blow to a lot of people. People had a hard time, and some people still have a hard time getting over that, because people just did not feel that the country would take that direction, and it did. And so it's like regaining your footing. So people did work it sharp and all. But I think we are regaining our footing. I can feel it. As I travel around, I can see it. I was very buoyed on that campus Monday of last week in the kind of interactions that I've had with people. It recently tell me that people are beginning to regain their footing, and that we are able to get through this, but we got to be vigilant. Now, I study history almost every day. I just finished my third book, and this book I call The First Aid, the book that I just finished. Little Brown is not going to release it until later this year, and I think they're going to wait until after the November elections. But I call it The First Aid. These are the 8 African Americans that served in Congress from South Carolina before me. A lot of people think I'm the first one. No, I'm number 9. There were 8 before me. One of whom was, well, 2 of them was from Beaufort. The one was Robert Small, and the other was Thomas E. Miller. We're both from Beaufort. The problem is there's 95 years between number 8 and number 9. And that's what this book is about. What led to those 95 years. And the fear that I have that if we don't regain our footing and do the things that are necessary, we could see a lot of years before there's a number 10. So I think that we are getting there if we just maintain. I'm trying hard. We have begun to evaluate everything based on that which is monetary. And we have to be careful about that. Everybody says how much money that is, how much money that it's going to make, and how much money that. There's some things that must undergird money. My father, the minister, used to preach sermons about the love of money. It didn't say money is the root of all evil. People will sometimes say money is the root of all evil. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. So there's a difference in the two. And so I think what we have to do is really focus on things, focus on each other, and we'll get through this. But we aren't going to get there if we put all our love in the wrong places.
There's the 14th Amendment, Congressman.
You got the 14th Amendment? Where's the gentleman? It's up here. Look what it says. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges of communities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person. So that's what you're talking about. And that's why they're wrong. The citizen part is separate from persons. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. And that's what they're doing to these people. So when they tell you citizen, no, it's about person. So thank you so much. Well, y'all didn't do too bad after all.
All right, we've got John Heath from Beaufort and Jeannie Brainerd from Beaufort. John Heath and then Jeannie Brainerd. Over here, Jeannie's in the white shirt, Walter, and then there's John Heath.
Thank you. You kind of answered most of my question, and I don't want to sound like a person without hope, because I do have hope. But I was in a study group that before the president was elected, we studied Project 2025. And as I watched every piece of that beginning to be implemented, how do we turn that around?
Now.
We don't. We don't. What we've got to do, in my not so humble opinion, is we've got to challenge it. Remember, Project 25 is a proposal. So much of what they're doing, or what's in that proposal, needs congressional approval. We got to elect people to office who will not vote to approve that foolishness. That's why this part of Beaufort is so important. When people pledge themselves to that document that you know from your studies, and anybody that look at those issues in that 900-page document, you know what the consequences could very well be if these things were to become the law of the land. And so we've got to make sure that we don't allow people to get elected to office who are pledged to carrying out those policies laid out in those pages. So this next election is going to be very, very important. Now, what happens in these two states I mentioned, Virginia, those are state elections that are subject to this year. That's the gubernatorial elections, state legislatures in Virginia. But the national people will not be exposed to the vote until the even number of years, which would be 26. But what happens is when you develop a trend, it catches on. And so these two elections will have a big impact on the thought process when people are getting ready to run in 2026, as to whether or not they give up. Because if we were to lose these two states, some people will lose hope. And that's what we got to work against, losing hope. Yes, sir.
My question is kind of complicated. The Trump administration is going in and cutting all these programs and all this kind of stuff, which is in violation of the Impoundment Control Act. Is the congressional leadership in the Democratic Party, are they actually who they should have standing, because they're the appropriators and they're the elected officials who enacted all that legislation for those programs to exist in the first place, and they appropriated the money for them. We need that money spent on the programs that you and your fellow members actually voted on to do it. You're the ones with the responsibility, not Elon Musk.
Right.
And is how you and the Democratic leadership are taking action to actually go after that, because you've got the law on your side. And in fact, 90% of the cases that are being brought against Trump and his programs Trump is losing.
Absolutely. In fact, he's losing more than 90%. And I think you're so right. And thank you for that issue, because you're right on target. Yes, I went back to the Appropriations Committee. As you know, I've been in leadership for a long time, but when I left leadership, I went back to the Appropriations Committee, and because of my seniority, I was allowed to become the ranking member on what we call transportation and HUD in the Appropriations Committee. I went there because transportation, I-95, the new bridge, HUD, housing. And I'm not going to have press conferences every day, you know. But I am always going to be looking for a way to get a vote out of the committee that I can take to the floor. I want you to rest assured that I'm going to be very diligent and vigilant. In fact, I often talk about Thomas Jefferson is given credit for this, but some historians said he never said it. I don't know if he said it or not, but I've always given him credit. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And I want you to know, not just me, but I keep a cadre of friends in these committees, and we're going to work hard to overcome that. And now, if we get a good enough vote in the House, then the Senate will be able to stop them. They've got enough votes to beat us in the House. But if we get any semblance of a bipartisan vote in the House, the Senate will have something to work with. Believe me, I'm working on that. Thank you.
All right, Ted Summers of Bluffton and Griffin Specker of Charleston. You Ted or Griffin?
Ted.
Ted. Griffin still here? Oh, Griffin's over there.
I have a couple of questions. I'm very curious. Behind closed doors, with your Republican colleagues, when Trump may not know what they're saying, what do they really think of what's going on?
Yeah.
Two, what are our options? What can we do if Trump decides to ignore the courts? What can we do?
Now, there are a lot of people saying that we're moving toward a constitutional crisis. I don't say that. We're already there. We're already there. We are in a crisis situation when it comes to the Constitution. And I think that most of my Republican colleagues know that. Some of them welcome that. But I think enough of them don't. Not a whole lot. But I think there are enough Republicans who, given the right amount of support or cover, as some would like to say, will challenge that. The reason I think that is, quite frankly, I won't betray confidence, but believe me, there are a lot of Republicans who think we're headed in the wrong direction. And I think that's why you see those numbers we got now. I don't know if y'all saw the new numbers came out this morning, but Trump is lower than any president has ever been at this particular juncture. You have a second question?
I might say how important that is, because before you can get behavior change, you have to have attitude.
Absolutely.
And so if they're leaning in that direction, the more pressure that is put upon them from events like this and so on, because they're not flying to the media, the more likely change will happen.
Absolutely. I mean, this is what it takes. It's what it takes. Nobody wants to stand alone. Nobody wants to stand alone. When they see those numbers like that, they see the reporting of meetings like this. I tell you, I was at Wofford. This event was at Wofford College, night before last. I started getting phone calls yesterday from people so moved by what they saw and heard up at Wofford. And I'll tell you what, the thing that surprised me, because most media have been thinking that people came to these meetings just to raise the ruckus. That's not what came up at Wofford. And one of the reporters that talked to me on yesterday about it was amazed. He said, people are really concerned. Because people were expressing themselves like you expressed themselves tonight. You aren't here yelling. You have some concerns, and you want these concerns addressed. And like you say, you aren't going to get them addressed until you create an atmosphere or within which to resolve some of these issues. And so John West used to tell me, John West was the governor that brought me into state government. And he called me into his office one day and he's like, he always called me Jim Clyburn, and it's one word to him. A long time before the internet, there's no space in between. He said that you catch many more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And so his whole thing to me all the time was you maintain as much honey in your expressions as you possibly can. So that's why when people say to me all the time, you seem to be so even keeled. How can you do that? Well, believe me, I'm sometimes burning up inside. But I try hard to maintain an atmosphere of honey.
Thank you, Congressman, for being here. My question for you is a bit long, so I hope you don't mind me and bear with me. Congressman Clyburn, when President Obama was elected in 2008, Mitch McConnell swore that he would be a one-term president. And while he was unsuccessful in ensuring this, But despite having a minority in all three branches of government, Mitch McConnell and the GOP were successful in blocking, stalling, and neutering all measures of the Obama administration, most notably blocking the Supreme Court nomination of Merrick Garland and gutting the Affordable Care Act. My question to you is, why are we not doing the same thing to the Trump administration?
Well, there are two ways I would like to address that. The first one is this. Did it stop everything? We got the Affordable Care Act. Now the Supreme Court invalidating it, added this contract stuff that allow the states to opt out, as we've done in South Carolina with Medicaid. They have not expanded Medicaid, and they've done that using that Supreme Court decision. Well, Obama was successful on a lot of fronts. They did stop his Supreme Court nominee because it was subjected to the filibuster. Now remember, there's the 1957 Civil Rights Act that strong firmly set the record. Filibuster.
Cory Booker just beat him.
For the opposite reason. Well, that was a 1957 act. It wasn't a 64 act. The filibuster didn't work in 64 or 65, and we got the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We got the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We got the Fair Housing Law of 1968. We got the amendments to the Civil Rights Act of 1972 because we were able to elect filibuster-proof Congresses. What has happened is that the filibuster, we did get it reduced from 2/3, 67, down to 60, but the filibuster is still there. Democrats have always argued against filibustering, especially these kinds of issues, and we just don't have a stomach for that. You cannot find, there may be one or two, but most Democrats are not going to do the things that a lot of our Republican colleagues will do to stop progress. So all I can tell you is that if we get the votes, we can cut off some of the filibusters, but the filibuster they are used. Now, I will tell you this, the filibuster is going to be used going forward because the Democrats, they don't have 60 votes to bring some of these issues to the floor, and the Democrats are not going to give them the votes.
So do you think Chuck Schumer should have used it?
Sir?
So do you think Chuck Schumer should have used it back during the continuing resolution?
Well, he could have come out against it, but he was not going to stop it. You got to have the votes. No matter what you may say, I'm against this, I'm against that. But when it comes to the House, you got to have 218 votes. When it comes to the Senate, you got to have 60 votes to put it on the floor. So Schumer, what caused the problem was his expressions, not what he did. He was not going to stop it. Not going to stop it because he doesn't have the votes.
All right, Beth Taylor from Bluffton and Kathy Malcolmson of Beaufort. And these may be our last two questions, Congressman, you let me know.
Okay.
Beth Taylor, I'm sorry, and then I said Kathy, there we go.
Right here. Where's that says?
Go ahead, Beth.
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. I had two questions on my card, one on the front and one on the back, so I'm going to kind of combine them a little bit.
I didn't see the back.
It's all good. So my husband and I went to our first protest in Columbia on not my President's Day, because there was nothing going on around here. When we got there, there were no young people. There were very few, and we're right there at the Capitol. The demographics were very similar to this room. So the baby boomers carried the first protest, and we continue to do that. What are we doing to get the young people out to vote?
Well, I'm gonna let Crystal handle that, but I will say this. What I try to impress upon young people is the fact that this country responds to youth. It does. It may rely upon age and experience, but the country responds to young people. And so I try to get them to understand that if this is what you really want, you got to go out and take it. When we were in South Carolina State, we couldn't even have an NAACP meeting on the campus. Can you believe that? On the campus, we couldn't have an NAACP meeting. We were not even allowed to elect our own student body president. We had to vote on people from a list provided by the administration. I'm serious. And I'll never forget, on that day when them and I met, and we were walking back to the campus from the jail.
Hand in hand. Yeah.
I'll never forget this. And we were talking about what we were up against. And I said that night to her, I said, you know what? The first thing we're going to have to do is get our house in order. I said, we're not here trying to integrate lunch counters and we're trying to do all this. And we ain't got no freedoms on that campus. We went back that night and we started planning, and Gilbert will tell you, South Carolina State, people don't realize this, was the first HBCU, a co-ed, that elected a woman to be president of the student body. Catherine Peppers from Columbia, South Carolina, we elected her. Yes. Because we rejected, when the administration came out with their list, we rejected it. And we wouldn't vote for anybody on that list. We got Catherine Peppers to run. Now, Gilly may have wanted to run it out. I may have wanted to run it. But there was one rule we can get around. You had to have a certain grade point at it. You couldn't get around that rule. So we got Catherine Peppers with the grade point at it. But seriously, and I tell young people all the time, we didn't ask anybody permission. So I said, you don't ask permission. You're a registered voter. You got strength. And it's biblical. It's biblical. We elders are called because we know the way. Youth, because we have the strength. And there must be a balance of knowledge and strength in order to get this done. So I tell young people all the time, I'm perfectly willing to help you with the knowledge, but I got to have you. Right. Because you've got the strength. And together we can get this done. And so I think that what we have to do is talk to young people, let them know the value that they bring to this process. You know, Crystal, before her, Jamie Harrison, Jamie Harrison came into my life when he was an 11th grade student. He was in the 11th grade, and I saw a future in him. And I nurtured him, kept him in my orbit. And look what happened. Ralph Dawson, who I sat down with at Columbia University on Monday last week, got kicked out of school when he was in 11th grade over in Charleston. I went to his house. I wasn't in teaching at the time. I'd already left the classroom. I took him back to school, made him stand in front of the class and apologize for the teacher. It took him 15 minutes. But he apologized. And what happened? He got a full scholarship to Yale University, a full scholarship to Columbia Law School. But he had a chip on his shoulder. And he just walked around with that chip. That's why he became such a good lawyer. And he became the lawyer for American Express. So you have to let young people know that you have value and we need you. And I'll be here to help guide you, but I need your strength. And I think that the young people will respond. I've never had a problem getting young people to respond.
And I'll go a little bit further to that. And engaging young people is different. And if you hadn't noticed, the staff in our office are very young. I think I'm old enough to be most of their moms. And that is one of the things that we're really working hard to do, is to we always say meet people where they are. When it comes to young people, they're online. So we have really, really ramped up our online presence, all of our social media, really trying hard to meet those young folks and pull them into the Democratic Party. They're probably not going to go protest. I mean, they don't even watch regular TV. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't even know what's going on. It's not on TikTok. They don't know what's happening. I have a 24-year-old son, and anything he calls and asks me about, if it's true, it's something he got off of social media.
Well, you have a process from 4 to 6, where all we young parents are doing is driving our kids to soccer, volleyball, baseball and stuff. So we have to plan something that our community, everybody of different age can engage and come and attend.
Yeah, and that's another thing
I know
too.
it's media time for other people.
Yeah, different.
Also time for young parents with kids to engage in all the activities.
And so folks who are planning these protests, we haven't done any protests, but doing them in a time where where young people are going to show up. And we tell our county parties, all of our young Dems, all of these groups that we have, these auxiliary groups, it does matter what time you have it, because I don't want to come to an 8 o'clock breakfast. I'm not as young as I used to be, but I don't want to eat breakfast on Saturday at 8 o'clock. I just don't want to do it. So if you're trying to engage young people, you've got to do things that they're going to be attracted to, and that's really what we're trying to do at the South Carolina Democratic Party, as well as making sure that our county parties are flipping the switch, because we haven't done that in the places where we need to do that as well. Not that we haven't been trying, just been a little unsuccessful.
Okay, so you're the only Democrat in the House of Representatives representing South Carolina right now. We look across the state, very few Democrats at the state level that are in governing positions. What do Democrats need to be doing in terms of messaging, or is it money? Is it lack of funding at the national level? What do we need to do to get some more Democrats in office here in South Carolina?
Well, as Christopher said, we're all working very hard trying to find the magic sauce that's necessary. And she's right. I think a lot of us, I know when I first was exposed to the internet or even computers, I thought a computer was a passing fad or something. A lot of us really have got to work a little harder, getting used to how people communicate today. I have 3 daughters, and it's amazing. There's 11 years between my oldest and my youngest, and they are totally different in the way they approach. Now, both of them are very political, very political. Angela, the youngest, is on the school board. quite frankly, when she came to me and told me she wanted to run for the school board, I tried to discourage her. And I said, Angie, you don't want to do that because you're going to get all my enemies. You won't get my friends, but you're going to get my enemies too. Well, she said, well, Dad, I want to do this. And so when she told me how she was going to do it, it was foreign to me. It was foreign to me. But you know what? She got more votes than all the others put together. Because she knew how to do that social media stuff, which I didn't know. But she made a believer out of me. And so we are working now trying to figure out how we can best. But the problem you get is the moment you perfect one medium, you got another one. It's like now, I've asked my staff to put me on Blue Sky. I'm doing Blue Sky now. Well, Blue Sky wasn't around 2 years ago. What happened, everybody was on Twitter. So Elon Musk purchases Twitter and turns it into his thing. So I said, well, get me off Twitter. But there's nobody following me, they're trolling me. So put me on Blue Sky. So these are things that we really are trying to work through. And you're right, it's a challenge, but we're going to have to measure up to it and get it done. Because this country is worth saving.
We really spend a lot of time, and Buford is the best place to talk about candidate recruitment. Like trying to convince folks to run for office is no easy deal. And trying to convince people who will be serious and credible and people that can relate to the voters in the district is absolutely hard. I spent a lot of time last cycle trying to find people to run for Congress. You know, up in Greenville in the upstate, I was really looking for a white person, a white man, and I'll tell you, Crystal, I think you're doing a great job, but why would I run? I can't win. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're very logical. They don't want to run and lose. So it's not as easy as you think just to say, oh, well, we've got all these empty offices. Why can't somebody run? We're really working hard. And Catherine, and I want to give her a round of applause. Buford County had an entire slate of candidates last cycle. That was no easy feat. So it is definitely difficult work. It's challenging work to do in a cycle when you keep losing, to find folks like yourself to say, come on and be a sacrificial lamb, you know, give the people something to vote for. But we're working hard to do that. And I think we're going to have a pretty strong ticket of candidates come 2026. We're going to find somebody to run against Lindsey Graham. Somebody who I believe went to college on Social Security benefits, survival benefits. We're going to find somebody that will run for governor, AG, all those offices. So if you want to run, please let us know. We'll get you ready. And as you said about resources, it does take resources. It takes resources to pay staff, to do the things that we're doing that y'all probably don't even see, you know? So it takes resources. So I will tell you to make sure you support your county party and to also support your state party. You don't have to be a super rich person. Those grassroots monthly dollars add up so fast. You can give the state party $10 a month. You know, 100 people do that's money, right? That's how we pay our light bill. That's how we cover it. So please remain invested locally, on the state level. National have to figure out for themselves. But right now I'm talking about the county and the state. So do those things and show up. Show up and help. When you can't give, please volunteer your time to dial, call, knock doors, write postcards, write letters. Don't stop fighting. It's working, I think. We're all scared, but we're all in this together. And thank y'all so much for giving us your time. Thank you,